Is torture ever moral? Is man good or evil? Do white lies matter? These are just a few of the questions that we've asked so far in this show. And I could understand if you were watching, you'd be thinking, well, these are all interesting. Hopefully you think that. But what's the unifying factor? What ties these together? Well, this video should give you some idea of some of the key themes that you're going to see throughout this show. The first theme is integrity. How do you define integrity? I think the most common answer I've heard is doing what's right even when no one's looking. Or sometimes people will say it's your character. It's good intentions. So integrity, as I've heard it best defined, is when the inside matches the outside, or when your inner thoughts match your outward expressions. I think I picked that up in English class. I had a really good English teacher. Shout out to Mrs. Ruff if she's watching. And this is something that I think it carries over into a lot of different issues. So we're going to try to bring in that and point out where integrity is a key issue in a lot of different conversations. It did come up in the White Lives Matter video, and you're going to see it come up more. The second theme is this idea of good and evil. So you saw the video with Stacy on is man good or evil? And that's kind of a classic question that's asked surrounding this issue of good and evil, but it really fits into this larger discussion of what is good, what is evil on a larger scale. And even just asking that question really sets us apart from, or sets me apart from relativists who think that there is no such thing as good and evil. So that's important to note. That we can even have this discussion. But good and evil are this question of what is good and evil is really one of the most foundational and important questions we can ask in philosophy, because if you can answer it, it guides the actions and decisions that you make. It guides who you vote for, what policies you support. If you can ask yourself, is what I'm about to do good or evil? Is what I'm about to vote for, is this law good or evil? So taking an issue and then asking, is this good or evil, is very important. And it gets a little more nuanced than that, because some things are inherently good and some things are situationally good. They're good in this situation, but they're not good in other situations. Some things are inherently good, they're always good, or they are inherently evil, always evil. So think about something like lying. I think you could make a strong case that there are situations where it is appropriate to lie. But some people would also make the case that lying is never okay. It's always bad. So, the same thing could go for killing. Is it ever okay to kill someone? Maybe in self-defense, is that okay? But if we can ever show a time where something is good in some situations but bad in others, then it's situationally good or evil, not inherently good or evil. And making that distinction is very important, because whenever something's inherently good or evil, you can pretty much end the conversation there. Whenever something is situationally good or evil, there's always at least one more layer that you need to go to figure out, okay, what makes it wrong in this situation? What makes it good in this situation? And I'll give you a hint, a lot of times it's the heart, it's the thoughts behind it. Third theme, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That's the opening lines to the Declaration of Independence, right? So this idea of self-evident truths, things that we take on faith, that we just lay out beforehand and say, we're not arguing about these because we take these on faith. We don't have any logical reason for coming to these conclusions. These are things that we just accept as a premise beforehand. Another word for something like that is a postulate. That's actually a term I've first heard in geometry. You might be familiar with Euclid. Euclid is considered the father of geometry, but really his only contributions to the field of geometry was taking all of these theorems that the Babylonians had already proven, and this guy's a Greek, and he's saying, but how do we, well, they hadn't proved it, they just observed them. And he said, how can we prove them logically? And so he actually comes up with these 10 things. I think some were considered axioms and some were postulates, but you can call them all postulates. They're all basically the same. 10 things that we accept on faith. And then you build out from there, using logic, all of the other geometry theorems that we have. That's pretty cool. I have a theory that our minds and our decisions and our beliefs work very similarly. We have a set of core beliefs, and then our conclusions flow from those logically or rationally. We'll talk more about that in another video, because that's actually a very important topic. But why even talk about core values? Why talk about postulates? And here's the biggest reason. There's the classic philosophical question, what is the meaning of life? Well, if you don't know your core values, then the answer is nothing. There is no meaning to your life. If you don't know your core values, then there is no meaning to your life at the very least. At least you can't believe that there's a meaning to your life if you don't know what you believe at your core. I want to get into something real quick that we haven't talked about too much on this show, and that's politics. We've sort of gotten into it a little bit with the conversation with Daniel Dodd on torture. That's a political issue, but we haven't talked much about Trump. We haven't talked much about really any president or any policies yet, besides the torture, which is sort of a policy issue. I do want to get into politics. I want to enter that space because I think it's very important. One thing that I believe is that politics is the science lab of philosophy. So I love philosophy. I love discussing these ideas, but politics is where they actually take hold and affect a society. So I want to talk about politics. And one of the visions of this show is to make politics fun again. And so I want to get there. But before we get there, there are two things that need to be addressed. One is I want you to know what my core values are, because I don't want to pretend to be unbiased. I want you to know exactly what I believe so that you can get value out of this show. If you don't know what I believe, then you're going to be suspicious of everything that I say. But if you know exactly what I believe, you can say, okay, you can rationalize what I say with what you believe. All right, so that's first thing. Second thing is I want to establish an effective form of discourse. We need to have a way of talking about politics that is not simply throwing feces at each other and seeing who wins. We need to actually try to get at truth. And so on this show, we're going to try to use kind of a conversational formula to do that. And I want to establish that. And that'll be in a future video. So keep your eyes open. There'll be a similar video like this. It'll be just a direct message explaining both the postulates issue. We're going to go a little bit more into the core values and talk about that, as well as how that can lend itself to developing an effective form of discourse. Okay, I think that about wraps it up. If you have any questions for me or would like to come on the show, please email me at thoughtsmattershow@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. You have a great day.